Welcome to Tales of Resilience, the podcast that shares the real stories of the people behind animal rescue, the heartbreaks, the triumphs, and the moments that keep us going. I'm your host, Jolene, a mental health therapist and lifelong animal lover. This podcast is brought to you by Zodipaws, a heart-led company celebrating the bond between people and their pets, and Animal Rescue Hub, our free nonprofit directory supporting rescue groups across the country. This episode may include references of animal suffering and death, as well as themes of mental health, including suicide. Welcome to Tales of Resilience. I'm your host, Jolene, and we have a great guest to introduce you to today. Our guest became an accidental foster for animals after realizing she could make a real difference and that she had a natural gift for connecting with animals. She founded Motley Zoo Animal Rescue, a rock and roll themed foster-based rescue in 2014, and she's also a certified welfare administrator. Please welcome Jme Thomas. Welcome,
Thank
Jme.
you. Thank you. It's really nice to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of this discussion regarding resilience in the animal welfare space. And it seems like you've had a diverse career path. Can you tell me more about your journey into the space of animal welfare and also share what Motley Zoo Animal Rescue is about and its impact?
Sure. So, yeah, I was designing clothes. That was what I wanted to do with my life since I was little. I did want to be a vet, but then my mom told me I would have to euthanize animals, and I it's funny because that set me off on it. But now I'm in a position where I do have to make life and death decisions. I just don't get paid like a vet, so I'm like, yeah. But I was doing I was doing fashion design, and I came across this little dog I wanted to adopt, and from that point on, I started taking an interest in what was happening with dogs in the area. And I learned that, shelters are overflowing all the time, and that by putting a foster in your home, you make space for more animals. And that, why would we have to euthanize animals if they could have a place to go temporarily? My little dog was a bit of a challenge because she didn't like other dogs. And so my husband thought I was a little nuts. And, I was like, we have to help. We have to help today. Like, that's what the email said. These dogs will die if you don't help today. And so I took it very literally. And I just said to my husband, I'm like, can we just try it once? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We gave it a shot. And somehow I was able to introduce the dogs in a way that when my husband came home, the big dog was at my feet, the little dog was on my lap, and he just looked at me and he was like, what did you do? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I just did what I thought I should do. And so, yeah, so it worked out. And we fostered that dog for about 6 months. And I cried like a baby. And I wanted to stop at the shelter on the way home, but it was closed. And so that was probably a good thing. Our second foster, because he agreed that if we didn't keep the dog and it worked out, then we could foster again. Second foster was not very easy. And actually, I almost gave up because I didn't understand her behavior. She scared me. And I hadn't grown up with dogs. My first dog was the dog that I got when I got married with my husband. And so, my husband said, well, let me help you figure this out. Let's figure this out. I grew up with dogs. We'll find a trainer. We'll do this. And once I learned about her behavior, like resource guarding, barrier aggression, separation anxiety, it wasn't a mystery anymore. I was able to figure out how to help her. She was still very difficult to get adopted. And I swear that the family called me like every month to tell me they were going to return her because, it wasn't working out. But they showed up later, like 6 or 7 years later, and they were thinking about renting my house, which was really funny. And they showed me her, and she became the dog that went out into the field and brought in stray dogs to their family, and they became this like rescue for all these dogs. And it was this dog, this weird dog that was so hard in the beginning, but she became so meaningful in the end. So, that was how I started. I was working with other organizations, but I also felt like there were some things that could be improved on, how people were treated, how the animals were cared for, systems, processes, just a lot of things that I felt were kind of falling through the cracks. And I did my best to try and help those organizations be better at those things, because I'm not going to say, hey, this should be better, and then wait for somebody to do it. So I took it upon myself to try. But it didn't really work out with them, because they didn't really want to make changes, and I don't think they thought it was possible. So I ended up going my own way, but I had met some people who felt the same way as I did, and we decided to band together and start Motley Zoo. And I had the name Motley Zoo kind of just floating around in my mind for a while, and I'm not even sure why or where, but I always kind of had a fascination with the term Motley Crew, because I just thought it was a odd phrase, I guess. And so anytime people would say, if you had your own rescue, what would you call it? And I was like, oh, Motley Zoo. And they would laugh. And I was like, all right, well, that's not bad. And I figured that if there's a bunch of grants on the table, and, it's furry angels and four paws and wings and, all these things, that there's so many organizations, even my friends, sometimes I can't keep their names, identified. But so yeah, so I thought Motley Zoo would work, and thankfully everybody voted for it, because it's not just what I want to do. And so we became Motley Zoo, and from the minute we put our website up, that was when I gave up fashion. I was actually in line to go on Project Runway. I had auditioned, and I had said, this, if I don't make it, then we start Motley Zoo. And I didn't make it, so we started Motley Zoo. And that really took a turn in my career and what I was doing. And so Motley Zoo took on the rock and roll theme. We tried to be different and empowering, fun. We didn't want it to be sad and hopeless. And, we didn't want people to feel bad. We wanted people to feel excited about joining. And so I think that we did that. It was very unique in the beginning, and I think a lot of people doubted us. A lot of people doubted our enthusiasm, but it's actually been 16 years, and we're still here. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And you're absolutely right about the names. I mean, as I've kind of been working on this project, right, reaching out and following a bunch of rescues, I would have to say that yours is very unique in that way. It seems like I mean, it's very niche as far as like theme based goes,
Mhm.
which is very interesting. And I also, as I follow your social media, it's also interesting how you guys have kind of capitalized that as far as connecting with bands and acts that kind of come through your area. And can you tell me a little bit about how you got into that process? That's fascinating to me.
Yes, I had a dream. We were going to see one of our favorite bands, my husband's absolute favorite band, called Rancid. It's a punk band. And we had brought in a bunch of cats that week and named the cats after the band members and some of their songs. And so the night before the show, I had a dream that I brought the cats to meet the band. And they thought it was so cool that, they could take pictures with the animals, and it would get the animals adopted and give them an identity. And so when I woke up, I was telling my husband, like, we were laughing at how ridiculous it was. And I just stopped and I was like, I'm going to do that. And he's like, what? And he's like, you're going to bring the kittens to a concert. And I was like, yes, I'm going to go to the back door with the kittens. I'm going to show them, and I'm going to say, hey, do you want to help these animals get adopted? They're going to invite me in. We're going to take pictures. It's going to go just like my dream. And he was like, okay, crazy. And so that's what I did. And that's exactly what happened. They invited me in. I spent about 45 minutes with them, which is a really long time for most bands. And I had tickets for the show the next day, but they were like, oh no, come tonight. We'll put you on the guest list, and whatever. And so I barely had like gotten out of the building, and I called my husband and I was like, oh my gosh, like, you have no idea what I just did. And I got to spend all this time with them and your favorite band. And so he just went, well, Slayer's coming and Snoop Dogg. What do you think you can do with that? And I was like, I don't know, challenge accepted. And so, yeah, somehow it worked out for Slayer. It worked out for Snoop Dogg. And yeah, from there, it was just I don't know, people started writing articles about us. And then the people at the venues were like, oh, we know you. You're the puppy and kitten people. Come on in, come on in. And so then it kind of, grew from there, where all the managers were like, put Motley Zoo on your list when you hit Seattle. And like, so there's this like network of people that communicate on tours, and Motley Zoo comes up all the time. So we've actually been doing this for since 2013. And what's interesting is that while no one knows that we started it, it has become a movement. And now organizations everywhere take animals to meet bands and to, do this kind of promotion. And so it really had not been done before. And I think it was the publicity that we received from it that really got people interested and involved. And so it's become kind of a thing of its own. And, it's sad that no one knows that we did it, but I don't care. It helps so many animals. It makes the bands happy. It gets animals adopted. So that's what's important to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, great ideas have to start somewhere, and I think I also love that you're just the type of person who gets an idea and just goes with it, right? And just tries something. And I love the ability to be confident enough to take a risk, right? You don't know if it's going to work or if it's not going to work, but just being willing to try.
I figure that the animals are always worth making a fool of myself. If that's the worst that happens, then oh well, Um, I'm I think I can get away with it too. Like I'm just like, what? Oh, okay. I'm silly, and yeah, I don't take offense, and I will try just about anything to help the animals. So there's a very deep, you know, motivation that is pushing me to try to be fearless even when I'm terrified. So
Absolutely. And then you had mentioned in the process of getting things going that there were some things that were important to you to change, to do differently. Are you comfortable speaking to some of those things?
sure, yeah. It just in general, whenever I would mention these things, people would say, "This is just how it is." And I was like, "Well, that is not a good reason for me." That's like when people say it's tradition, and I'm like, "Well, yeah, no, not good enough for me." Um, so, there was a lot of disorganization, and animals were coming in. There was no quarantine protocol. Um, they were being transported all together in these vans, and sick animals were making other animals sick. Animals were dying in foster homes. I mean, I had recruited a bunch of my friends to foster, and one of the animals died in their arms. And I was like, like there are ways to prevent this. Not all the time, right? But this is just total chaos, and the whole group came in sick, and then they just put them in foster homes without any kind of warning about this could be kennel cough, this could make your dog sick, you should look for these things, you should do this. So there were very lax rules in terms of just straight up medical protocols and policies and things like that I didn't like. And so, I was trying to institute kind of like a quarantine, like put the dogs in your bathroom and do this, and it sucks for, 2 weeks, but do it. And then also, there was this kind of use them up once, like a disposable foster mentality, where it's like, well, they're only going to do it once, so let's just use them and they'll be gone. And I was like, that it doesn't have to be like that. Like I'm certainly not like that, and I am not like that despite how those things went, right? So I'm like, there are other people like me. There are other people that if really try to create a better system, they will stay. And they did not believe me. So um, I was just like, I think people deserve better. I think the animals deserve better. And I don't think that you are helping the animals in your care if you are just saying more, 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 let's help the next one. You have to help the animals that you have with quality care, get them adopted, focus on them, and then take in more. That's, so the more, more, more thing is, it's hard. It's hard to put that boundary emotionally, but I I saw what went wrong with other people, other organizations. I saw people were losing their homes, their marriages, because they couldn't draw lines. And so from the very beginning, I said, these are the things that I will not do. I will not lose my house. I will not lose my marriage. I will not, like lose myself. And obviously you do in some ways, like it's just, it does become all consuming, but I still draw those lines. And sometimes it's easier than others and sometimes it's really hard. And, but it's interesting to me that I have been doing this, and my husband's been a part of it too, for like 3 times as long as we've been married. So for more than I knew him without this, I've known him with this, and he is so supportive. He is so amazing. Um, but yeah, it's not his full-time thing, it's my full-time thing. And all I ever hoped was to make my hobby my career. And I feel very fortunate that that I've been able to do that, and that I've been able to help other people turn their hobbies into a career too. So, but it is not without a lot of work. But drawing lines, drawing boundaries, that is one of the most important things that you have to be able to do. And you cannot, you know, just bleed for everyone,
Yeah.
even the animals.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that applies certainly to many domains of someone's life, but especially in animal rescue, because it is, as many people that I've talked to have shared, like it's a river that doesn't stop, right? There are animals constantly in need. And so it'll easily pull on your heartstrings, and yeah, knowing the limit in order to operate safely and protect yourself, the animals, of the people involved in your organization. I can
Yeah.
imagine that it is hard.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason a lot of rescuers become hoarders, because they can't draw those lines. They can't do it. And that's when, like it's good when you can combine forces with people. You can work with people. Like some people have trouble making those boundaries, but you can help them. And I always I always joke with the fosters. I'm like, friends don't let friends keep too many animals. So, if you're falling in love with every foster, sorry, we're not going to, let you do that anymore. We're going to try and encourage you to let them go, and, but talk with us if you're really having those problems, because we don't want to create this kind of, um, you know, contention in your heart, in your life. And chances are we can talk you through it, and you'll feel better about letting them go. So that is something I joke with a lot of people, because I don't want them to become all of a sudden people that have 10 dogs and then they can't foster, and that's the thing, is you have to want to foster and save more than you want to keep them. And that's hard for people, but with encouragement and a system and kind of that awareness, I think you can help people avoid that caveat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Can you give me a glimpse into kind of day-to-day operations, or what things kind of look like for you guys on the back end and everything that's involved?
Sure. It's very different than it was when we started. When we started, I did everything. Like I was the full-time person, even though I had a board and all these things. I literally did every single step of everything. Once we started our daycare in 2014, I also was there babysitting the mission every day. I didn't even get paid for 3 years. We were paying other staff, and we had volunteers that I was running, that I didn't, I wasn't getting paid, but they were. Until it was profitable, that was when that was the line. I was like, when we're profitable, then we can take salaries. So it was very much a day-to-day babysitting everything, everybody, creating every system process, making sure people are happy, making sure the animals are safe, literally running daycare rooms, and training dogs, and making sure that people know how to watch dogs in groups, which is not easy. And for example, we would try and hire some trainers, and they couldn't run a group of dogs because
Mm.
they were used to working with one dog at a time, and they had the most trouble. Like someone fresh and green and a total newbie could come in and learn how to run a room full of dogs, and the trainers struggled. So we learned a lot of things like that, how to work with volunteers, how to work with fosters. My partner in the rescue, Patty, she was the one, especially once I took on the day-to-day daycare, she absorbed all of the foster care program. We were splitting it prior to that. And so, we were only as big as she could be. And, we got help with some cats, we got help with some dogs. And so, we could expand and contract as needed, as we could maintain the quality that we desired. And that was the important part. Never forego quality for quantity. And we've been noticed and respected in our community, both in the public eye and in the animal welfare system here in Washington, for our standards. And there are other organizations and businesses that have modeled their standards after ours, which is great, right? Like, I want people, if people are going to be doing this, I want them to be doing it properly. I want them to really have these things in mind. And we've learned the hard way. We've seen other people learn the hard way. And so we know how to avoid it as best we can. I want people to be successful at it. So that does make me happy. Nowadays, about 3 years ago, we bought a property where we do boarding and training. And so in that time, I switched places with Patty. So now she is the one there with her husband, who is our lead trainer. And she is the one babysitting the mission every day. It's about 40 minutes away from my house. So I don't go there all the time, but I continue to, network with people, do interviews like this, and find funding, and try and find new opportunities for our animals, for fundraising. I do the events, I go to the concerts. We just went to see John Batiste yesterday, and he's actually thinking about adopting the puppy that he met. So stuff like that. So I'm kind of the glue that keeps it all together, and I'm the grease and the calibration and the maintenance, more so than every day to day, but maintaining relationships with the fosters, with the volunteers, with our staff. Those are the things that are really important to me, and those are the things that I spend most of my time doing, is communicating with people and building a community around those relationships, and trying to find ways to get people involved, trying to find new ways to promote what we're doing and get people engaged, and especially raising funds. So I do a lot of grant writing. I do a lot of writing in general. I contribute to different articles and things like that, like journalists, need comments and things like that. So I do that. I like writing. But yeah, I answer a lot of emails. So it's not very glorious. And I don't foster as much as I used to, because I find that I just don't have the same capacity. There was a point where I had, 15 little dogs at my house at any point in time. And, I did that for like a decade. And, I just, I can't do that anymore at that same level. So I foster really sick animals, or small dog behavior cases. And I do that, relatively periodically, because, you go through different phases of things. And I always want to be the person that can help that animal in front of me. But I also know my limitations in terms of what I'm capable of right now, and where my boundaries are in my life. So it can be challenging sometimes when I want to help, but I know that I really can't, because I have all these other things going on. So
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about all this work that you're doing, and obviously a lot of learning, sounds like a big learning curve on some of these things, but
Mhm.
I think also a lot of what comes with that is, as you talk about building relationships with community, um, you're also dealing with a broad range of people who I do think often have misunderstandings about how things operate and what is what. And I'm curious, what are some common misunderstandings that you hear, and what would you really want people to know and understand?
I think the biggest misunderstanding is people think shelters and rescues are the same. We both have animals, so we operate the same. Unlike bookstores and libraries, both have books, operate very differently. Go in and try and borrow a book from a bookstore and they'll arrest you. Go in and try and buy a book from the library, they'll say no. So there are very different systems in place. And the reason is so that not only can we serve the most animals, but we can serve people in the ways that they would like to be served. So if you want to be able to go to a place, pick out the dog you want that day, great. go to your local shelter. They can offer that. If you want more customization and kind of that, matching, and you really want someone to think about and take into consideration all the factors in your life, and they've gotten to know the animal in a home setting, then it's going to take longer. There's going to be more involved. We're not just going to get your name and phone number and give you one of these animals that we've spent the last 3 months rehabilitating. So I think people just think that they all operate the same. They get very frustrated when they don't get what they want. And they also, seem to think you get it from both ends. You have these animals and you make it so hard to adopt. And then, well, of course you should be, discerning in who you're sending your animals to. And the reality is we don't want them to end up in the same situation that got them to us in the first place. And so, then people are like, well, the foster adopted the dog I wanted, and, that's not fair. And I was like, you fell in love with a picture. They fell in love with the animal. They opened their home. They did something generous, and they should be rewarded for that. We are going to give them priority. But we are also clear with our foster families that you cannot jerk people around either. So if we're representing an animal and we get an application and we set up a meeting, that's it. Like, you cannot keep that animal. And so, that causes problems sometimes too. So, but I think in general, it's misunderstanding, why the animals are with us, what we're doing, why each organization operates the way it does. And frankly, every rescue operates a little differently too. And I get it. I get why it's frustrating, but when you think about the fact that we're not just giving out widgets, I mean, these are live animals. These are beings that we've loved and cared for, often from the brink of death. Like, give us some credit for, needing to understand what you really want, what you need. And, it's the people that just want what they want when they want it. Those are the people that are surrendering the animals just as quickly later. They are the ones to blame the animal for a problem faster than someone that is willing to take some time and effort to, get involved. And so we say we're building a relationship. We are not engaging in a transaction. So if people don't like that, then I'm like, okay, that's okay. You don't have to work with us. Go find a shelter. And the cost aspect of it too is very, I think can be a problem for people. So they're like, well, a dog at the shelter is $50. And I was like, well, it doesn't really cost them $50. It costs them $500 to take care of that dog. And I said, but people are giving donations to that shelter because it's been around for 50 years. And they have vets on staff, so they can afford to do spay and neuter more animals for less. I'm like, so someone is subsidizing that for you to discount that. We don't have that. When we spend $500 on an animal, we have to pay back $500, So I'm like, it's just not the same. And I'm like, and when you adopt from a shelter, you're not going to get the same kind of comprehensive care as if you adopt from a rescue. So, you're getting discount vetting is what you're getting. It's not you're buying an animal. It's the commodity is vet care, and how much vet care you get for how many dollars. It's different for every kind of organization. So a lot of people don't understand that. And now that vet care costs are astronomical. I mean, we're at almost $1,000 per animal. And you can only adopt out a cat for about $200. And that's a lot. And then we had to raise our donation on puppies to $700. I never thought we would go over 500. But we still aren't paying the bills. And now things have changed too, and especially in the last couple of years, and donations just are not coming in. And so we cannot rescue the animals if we are not bringing in the money. And part of that is, if you're going to go home with this animal, then you need to put up the most money for that animal's care. So that part has been really hard too. People they think that you should just give them an animal because you're a charity. I'm like, it's not a charity for you. It's a charity for the animals. So yeah, people really misunderstand charity as well, or how donations work, or how nonprofits work. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I literally just had a conversation with someone last week about what it costs to rescue an animal. Because I think you're absolutely right that people do assume or think that you should just be able to, yeah, just pay $50 or uh, sometimes they think you should just, and I know shelters do kind of work on, they do no fee days, right? Where, you can adopt an animal for no cost. So I think there is, like you said, that difference between a shelter and a rescue. Um, the financial part probably does get confusing and frustrating.
Well, and there is something I would like to say about the free days is that people get upset when shelters do that. And people are always upset with shelters and rescues. Um, but they get upset and they say if people don't pay for something, they don't value it. But when you look in the shelters right now and see all the purebred dogs that people paid 5, 6 more $1,000 for, paying that much money did not make them more valuable to those people. They are disposable still to those people, perhaps more so when they can afford that. So what we're seeing right now is that there are tons of purebred animals, especially dogs, large dogs, that are like a year, 2 years old in shelters because people, they on a whim decided they wanted this beautiful dog, and they had the money to buy it, and it meant nothing. So unfortunately, I think that there is a misunderstanding that investing in the animal makes it more valuable. That's not really true. It can be, I'm sure, but it's not.
Mhm.
So it's not always the case. I mean, so
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's always an important, excuse me, point to make around that there are, in fact, purebred animals in shelters and in rescues, and um, yeah,
and puppies. There are 30% of the animals in shelters right now are puppies, and they're not getting adopted because people have gravitated away from adoption and buying has become the new norm, which is devastating because, for 15 years we were working towards, adoption being the way to get pets. But the pandemic really changed that. There were not enough animals available in the rescue system. So breeders saw an opportunity, they started breeding, people started buying, and they haven't stopped. And that is a major cause of what is happening right now in the animal welfare system. And if breeders would take their dogs back more often, that we would not have the same crisis. It is not no longer just a spay and neuter problem, unwanted animals. That is part of it, but far and away, how people are sourcing their animals is actually the biggest problem. That's at the start, and then you add the cost of vet care, you add the accessibility to vet care, you add all of these things on top of it. But where people are sourcing their animals is right now the biggest problem, and no one knows that, and no one wants to hear that because they want to believe they can just do what they want to do, and it's their right to buy whatever they want. And I'm like, it's not a right, it's a privilege.
Mhm.
And yeah, there are a lot of rescue dogs that deserve a loving home. And buying a purebred dog is not going to get you a good dog, a healthy dog. And that's why they're in shelters.
Yeah.
I think people think it's a shortcut to training and socialization. They think genetics will
Mm,
do the job for them.
uh-huh.
And it's just not true. They're
Yeah,
still a dog.
that's right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
mhm.
So, crisis is a word that often comes up in this work, and I think it lends itself pretty easily to this conversation about resiliency and what it takes to do this work. If you had to define resiliency in your own words, how would you define it?
Honestly, it's being superhuman often. And, it is finding any shred of strength and hope when there seems to be none, and really just pulling out all the stops and not giving up. And so, there have been many times when I thought I could not handle this anymore. I, I've been through all sorts of different things. And, you know, ultimately I found the fire, that I needed. Something was still there giving me that, you know, green light, like, no, no, don't give up. You can do this. You can keep doing this. And so, but it is not something that I think most people can do, honestly. I don't think I'm special. I just think I'm like ridiculously relentless in my pursuit. I'm just persevering through whatever. but I see that I'm making an impact. And as long as I feel like I'm making an impact, it's always worth it to me. But I have been tested in ways that I never imagined I would. I knew I would have to, you know, be superhuman in many ways, shapes, and forms. Um, it's very alienating to be responsible for all these animals, all these people. Um, you have to make unpopular choices, and people get mad at you, but you have to be more courageous and intentional than people's anger or emotions. So, these are things that I said to myself in the very beginning. I'm going to make a commitment that I am not going to let someone's opinion sway my behavior or my efforts inappropriately, because I feel obligated you know, to someone else's emotions. I am not going to, I'm going to save animals from people, but I am also going to protect people from animals that are unsafe. And these are commitments I made to myself before I started Motley Zoo, and they are tenets that I bring up in my life when I'm dealing with struggles and people and conflict and public outrage or whatever. I have to dig deep and remember, why are you doing this? Are you doing this for the right reasons? Make the decisions that are right, no matter what anybody thinks, and you will survive. So, but that is extremely hard to do. And most people can't even just make a normal decision, without feeling like they're worried about hurting their friend's feelings or, something. So you have to really look at what this is about, and it can't be about you. I meet a lot of people that are like, I want my own rescue. And I was like, okay, stop right there. It's never going to be about you. It's going to be about everybody else, everything else. And you will be lucky if you ever get what you want or need, but it's not about you. And so, I tell people to check their egos at the door. You cannot put yourself above this mission if you want to have a mission. And there are times when I say it's we over me, but there are times when that me starts to rise and the we starts to, go down, and people, it's about them. And whether it's, they want credit, they don't get enough thanks, they have needs that are not being met because the organization is not there to meet your needs. It is there to meet the needs of the animals. um, so we lose people sometimes because perhaps they lose sight of what they're there for. And maybe they just don't have it in them to be that giving or to be that selfless, and that's okay. It's okay. But you can never put yourself first. However, you have to draw those boundaries. You have to remember to draw those boundaries. And I don't think that's necessarily putting yourself first. I think that is the stop, and like the absolute emergency brake. That's where you have to be sure that you can draw those lines, or else you will burn out so fast. And a lot of people do. They get in, they jump in head first, and they're like, "Wah!" And they just want to do everything, all the things, and they burn out. And so we try and talk to them about it, and we try and tell them, like, hey, pace yourself. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. There will be time, and so, yeah. So, sometimes people are like, okay, yeah, I need to step back. I need a break. I need this. And we're like, great, just take that time and then come back to us when you're refreshed, or come back to us when you feel like you can commit, more effort or more time or whatever it is. But, I think a lot of people find they're so busy with things, but they don't even really know what they're busy with.
Mm.
And and the thing that I think is important about the work we do is that why you're busy, and it means something. And that finding that thing that really gives you purpose and meaning is so valuable. So I encourage people, yes, it's hard, but find something that really makes you go. Like, give it a try. Volunteer at a food bank, volunteer at a soup kitchen, volunteer, try fostering once, just see what it's like, because you can't say you can't do it if you don't try. And you might be surprised how much it changes your life in very positive ways, not just in, this element of stress or, responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like, um, in the most general sense, having a purpose, having meaning in what you're doing is essential in having that resilience, having that ability to, yeah, seem superhuman, to be able to keep going when things are really hard, and um, starting to notice when you need to have those boundaries in place.
I think it's important to have the idea of making an impact, not having a goal in terms of like, I'm going to rescue them all. Like, that's not possible. Like, let's be realistic. Let's just make an impact. Let's see, make the most impact you can make, but you are one person. So be realistic about that. And it can get frustrating when you're striving and you're like, I want to save them all and I want to do this. And it doesn't seem like enough, but you have to be satisfied with what you're capable of.
Mhm.
And that can be really hard too. That can be, even I get really frustrated sometimes that I'm not doing enough. And I'm like, but you're doing what you can, and that's it. So the goal has to be making an impact. It has to be flexible. It's about devotion to this idea, but also recognizing that that idea and that purpose might change slightly along the way, and it's not a very rigid thing. So when you're too rigid, you're going to break.
Absolutely. Yeah, I when I'm talking with my clients in, therapy sessions, we're often talking about the difference between like expectations, which I think are very black and white, and it's very like it's this very like kind of unrealistic, unfortunately, perception of how things should be or what
Yeah.
we want them to be. And often, we're faced with disappointment and anger because things can never be that way, because life is not black and white, it's full of gray, and trying to find the standard in yourself or the intention in yourself of what's going to be okay enough or good enough in this moment. And um, that's it's a very human struggle, because I talk about this stuff all the time. um,
Yeah, you strive for those ideals, but you have to recognize that you will never ever reach them. But the minute you also stop striving for that level of whatever, then you start falling behind too. So I feel like I can never just sit on my laurels and be like, yeah, we did
yeah,
that. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it's never done.
yeah.
And so sometimes I have to talk to myself about that. I'm like, but you did this. And
Hmm.
if it all came down tomorrow, if I couldn't do it tomorrow, if something happened, I'm proud of what I've done. There's over 5,000 animals that are alive, and thousands of people that are happy because of the work that we've done, and that's enough. And so, I'm on a compassion fatigue Facebook page, and I see people struggling, and I'm like, you know, sometimes you just have to say, I did that. I did more than most people will ever do in 10 lifetimes. That is something. Just give yourself credit for that. And if you can't do it anymore, that's okay. Pass the baton. Like, do not feel ashamed. You did what you could, and you should not have to do it forever.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I didn't get into this so that I could like kill myself over it. I want to retire someday. I want to see the organization go on. I don't want it to be dependent on me. And so, you know, but I can also say, hey, I did that. And if my dreams to have this legacy don't work out, that's okay. Like, I still did it. I made something of myself. I made a difference in my corner of the world. That's the best you can do. And I feel good about that. So, I have these conversations with myself too, because I also, in planning and strategizing for what we do, I have to confront the worst case. What's the worst case? And, sometimes it can seem doom and gloom. It can seem like I'm like all consumed by these negative ideas. But no, I am trying to find a way to avoid hitting those icebergs, and I'm thinking like below the surface, it's not just what's up here that most people are looking out for. So, part of that is just really being intentional and confronting the worst case scenario. What would you do if this happened to you? What would you do? What would you do? And so I've confronted those things, and I've tried to kind of think through all the things. And so I'm not as scared of the worst, because I've already been there. I've already thought about it. I've already made a plan. And yeah, like, it doesn't always go like your plan,
Yeah.
but when you prepare yourself, and I think that's part of it. It's never going to be completely idealistic. And if you have that mentality, then you are going to be stuck in this rigid structure that is just not, it's not going to bend and flow with the times, the needs, and you are going to break.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. Do you, I mean, obviously, you've spoken a lot about boundaries, which are obviously essential. What are some other strategies that you encourage in others or in yourself when you're trying to take care of yourself? Because I hear what you're saying that this is a very selfless thing to do, that you are often on the back end of getting your needs met. But how do you sustain yourself?
Yeah, I guess I find that in general, I find satisfaction when I help other people.
Mhm.
So, or animals or whatever. So just the act of helping really does make my life better. And so while it can seem like I'm just, obligated to people or serving animals, like I'm getting something out of it clearly because it fuels me, right? Um, but it's a dichotomy, I think. I guess I would say that, I when we first moved to our from our daycare, where every day the dogs would go home and the fosters would take care of them at night. They would clean up the poopy puppies. They would, you know, do the training in the evening and feed them and all that. When we moved from that to a setting where we had boarding and training, and our foster dogs were now living in kennels and they didn't have a foster home because they had nowhere to go, our staff was very overwhelmed. And I was like, what is the problem? Like, what's going on, you guys? Like, it's just, we're just in a different setting. But I realized, no, um, they were now the fosters too. They were now the people cleaning up after the poopy puppies. And they had never had to do this before. They just clean up a few messes at daycare. They didn't have to do it all night and come in the morning to like diarrhea all over the walls and all over the puppies. And so one of our staff people um, had read an article or something about compassion fatigue, and they're like, I have that. And I was like, really? Oh my God, I'm so sorry that I didn't realize like this is what happened, that you didn't know compassion fatigue was a thing, and that this is what you've been experiencing, and that's why things have been so hard. So once I identified that, I think we were able to address it, and we were able to work with it a little bit more, and kind of talk to people about it. I felt a little embarrassed and ashamed that I didn't know to warn them about it, but it was because I think for the most part in our staff and volunteers and in the daily work that we were doing in person, it was more fun. It wasn't the hardest part, and the fostering can be really the hardest part. And so once I realized that their roles had changed so much, that then we started to talk about compassion fatigue. And but mostly I really try and encourage people to learn things. Like, you're going to learn a lot. This is not going to be easy, but I don't think you'll regret it. Working through this dog's challenges now, like when you have a dog in the future, or your mom gets a dog, or your friend gets a dog, you're going to be the one that can help them. So don't think that just because you're not keeping this dog doesn't mean you're not going to get something out of working through it. So I try and remind people that this is really important. Like, this dog is here because someone else gave up on them. Let's not give up on them. Let me help you figure out how to do that. So I'm really keen on encouraging and empowering people, and knowing that they are going to make mistakes, but having the patience and tolerance to understand that that is not something that everyone can do. And I just try to have eternal patience. Sometimes I walk away and I'm like, oh, but I share stories and anecdotes. I tell people how I've made mistakes. I show people I'm a real person, and don't worry, this has happened to me before, but here's how you can avoid it happening to you. So I use my own examples a lot, and I am a little self-deprecating, I think,
Mm.
because I think it makes me more accessible. It makes people trust me, and then they recognize it's okay to make a mistake. It's not failure when you make a mistake. And so, that's really important when you're dealing with animals, because people are going to do things that they're not supposed to, even if you tell them not to. And you have to have those boundaries where you can tell someone, stop, don't do that, and it's not yelling at them. And then you they stop and you say, okay, I'm sorry, but you were about to get bitten. Let's talk about what happened. And just being very truthful, honest, forthcoming, objective, and just teaching people you didn't make a mistake. Let's just learn from it so we can all be safe. So it's stuff like that where I really try and empower people. And so I'm trying to build people up. I'm trying to create more of me. I'm trying to delegate my skills and my understanding, my experience to other people so that I can amplify what I'm doing. I don't want to be the linchpin. I don't want this to be dependent on me. From day one, I've said, I want to make myself obsolete. I want to put people in place that know how to do all the things that I do, and I don't have to be there. And so, that's something I'm working on. It's maybe a little frustrating sometimes that at 16 years, I'm like, yeah, like, I still haven't found someone that can do that or that will commit to that, or, but, I'm trying, and so I think it's just putting people in the right place, knowing what personalities too can work and what don't. There are people that want to help, but they're very toxic, and you have to protect the people that are, not that. You have to protect your best people from that kind of thing too. So sometimes you have to be tough on people, and just their personalities or their habits or whatever it is something where sometimes we have to fire volunteers, and that's really hard. But we do it in a way that I think gives them agency, and it doesn't make them feel like it's personal. So I'm just trying to find the best in everybody and put that best towards the mission together collaboratively. Um, I don't know if that really answered your question, but
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, it's a really great example of uh, someone trying to do their best at being an effective and healthy leader. And that is it's not an easy job, right? Because you do have to be candid, honesty is a part of that. But you can also be compassionate in it too. And so thank you for your leadership in that.
oh, thank you. And I am like, I am compassionate to a fault. And so I have to make sure that that empathy doesn't become ruinous, that I'm not, um, I like Kim Scott's book, The Radical Candor. I felt like that really like just kind of spoke to what we were trying to do and how we, try and be even on the right side of the scale or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I mean, you can be nice, but it can ruin things. It can hurt people. And so you can't do that. But you can't be, snappy, and you have to be honest, but be kind. And so, but I feel like that's kind of who I am, and that I feel very fortunate that that's who I am, because there's a lot of things I think some leaders struggle with that come more naturally to me, and I feel very grateful for that. I do not take it for granted. I don't. But I try and put myself in the position where I can help others try to find that in themselves. I try to see the potential in people. Sometimes I see more than they do, and I get a little frustrated sometimes because I'm like, you could be doing this. But I have to accept that they don't always want to do that either. So in friendships, in life, I've come to these points where I'm like, you can either be right or you can be friends. You can either be right or you can, and it's not about being right. It's about relationships. And I think that's something that is very hard for a lot of animal people. We get a lot of people that come to us and say, I hate people, but I love animals. Well, I'm sorry, but this is all dependent on people. It's dependent on people adopting animals, caring for them, working together, working with you. Like, this is all about people relationships. So if you are not good with people, you're going to struggle. I mean, I also see plenty of organizations that have terribly, misanthropic people as leaders or in charge of people, that just boss people around, and they have no care or consideration. They don't go out of business. I don't know. But I don't think that's the way to go. I think that you do have to dig deep and find your compassion for people all the time. And whether it's, someone that's struggling that needs to surrender their animal, whether it's someone has neglected or abused an animal, like you still have to be kind for the sake of that animal. And yeah, so sometimes you have to give people a hug when you just want to be, you're so mad that they didn't do something sooner, right? Like, but I'm like, I understand, I know these are people and they've made mistakes. So yeah, so you have to love people too. And as much as people can frustrate me, and my husband always says, he's like, it's never the animal cases that get to you. It's never these, like, tragic things that have happened to the animals. Like, he's like, you just work through those and you fix them, and he's like, but it's the people that are weighing you down sometimes, the conflict, the troubles. And he's like, and so, sometimes I'm like, oh, people frustrate me so much. But then I realize I do really love people, and that is what this is about, is building relationships with people. I like getting to know people. I like creating, you know, a relationship, not a transaction. And so people are very valuable, and you have to treat them like a resource, not like a tool.
Yeah, I like that saying. It's very nice. Speaking of the animals, animals certainly can show us a lot about resiliency as well. Um, is there a particular animal that really impacted you, a story of their resilience that you're able to witness, or something that really stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the cases that stands out to me the most was this little dog called Jessica Biel. And we had put her in an adoptive home, and we explained to them, hey, this dog is shy. I mean, this is most dogs, right? Even unshy dogs, we are like, please put a leash on them, leave the leash on in the house. Like, this will prevent bites, this will prevent them running away, getting out the door. Like, they don't know you. So let's use the leash to manage them and to be an extension of your management, without being threatening, and to be overly cautious and overly safe. Well, we told this woman, do this, these are the reasons why. And she didn't like that. And so she went home, took the leash off, and I mean, within hours, the dog got out the door. She didn't tell us, which is very frustrating. The only reason we found out was because the dog was brought into a vet, walking in a handstand, because she had been hit by a car and was in so much pain because her pelvis was shattered. And when we called her, she's like, you gave me a broken dog. I don't want her back. And I could have strangled that woman. And, but this little dog, like, we thought for sure we're going to have to euthanize her. Like, this is terrible. But she had so much spirit. And she was like, no, 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 no. I can do it. And we actually got a lot of flack from people in the community because we were trying to raise money for her surgery. And they're like, this is a pathetic example of, trying to extend life beyond reason. And we were like, we understand why you would say that, but if you met her, you would agree with us. We promise. Please trust us. And so at the time, spending $10,000 on one dog was a lot of money. Um, it costs that now all the time, but yeah, so she was super, super resilient, and it was her spirit that guided us and told us, no, it's not her time. I've been there when other dogs have shown me it is my time. Please, you've tried, we've done this, but I need you to give up. And I have to be strong enough to do that. And not everybody can do that either. Like, some people will continue to allow suffering, in this misguided way to try and save life, but life at all costs is not always the answer. Um, and there was another little dog that I think was like a total miracle. His name was Figaro. And when he came to me, he was neurological, and he was shaking, and he would fall down, and he couldn't walk. And I had never witnessed distemper before. I did not know what it was. And it turned out to be distemper.
Mm.
And so I was doing my best, but I had to hold him up to poop and pee, and he just kept falling over. He could barely eat. And my husband and I, for a couple of days, we were like, all right, you know, and this one night we were like, if he's not better tomorrow, like, we have to let him go. This is not gonna work anymore. And the next day he jumped up and stood up and he's like, nope, I'm okay. I'm really fine. And we were like, what? And he could walk, and we were just like, what the heck? And he recovered. Like, he was always wobbly a little bit, but he could run, he could do everything. And I was like, dude, we almost gave up on you because it was really bad. But he just was like, he's like, no, I heard you talking and I'm not ready, so I'm gonna show you. So that too, those are two really good examples of the dog spirit being what totally guided us in our decision making. And I
Absolutely.
think I think you have to be cognizant of that too, and you have to be, you don't have control. You have to take what is reality, and feed it through your filter of ideals, and then come to the best conclusion you can. And that is so hard for most people. And it's hard for me. It never gets easier. I never, in having to euthanize for serious behavior or health, I'm always bawling. I'm always crying, but I always know it was the right choice.
Mhm.
I never doubt that. But I make very sure before we get there that that's the case. So I know by the time we've gotten there that there's no other alternative. And thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. We've had a 99.9% release rate for the entire 16 years that we have operated.
Wow.
And far and away, it was humane euthanization to alleviate suffering far more than unrehabilitatable behavior.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazing statistic. And I mean, it must be when I hear you talking about being able to attune to the animal and sense when it has that will and that desire to continue on, or when you know it's time to have to let that animal go away peacefully, that it takes a certain amount of wisdom. And I think that that certainly comes with experience. But I think it's also this kind of instinctual and uh, um, there's another word that I want to use, but it's not coming to me. But this combination of emotion, right? This emotional intelligence and this rational part of your brain, and being able to sit in that middle part with that and just know that you're making the best decision possible.
I call it weirdly robotic in my ability to be pragmatic and objective and logical in the face of very emotional situations. I don't know how or why I'm able to do that, but I am able to compartmentalize and remove myself and my emotions and look at things objectively and be like, this is what you have to do. It's not what I want to do. This is what I have to do. And I think maybe some people um, think me cold hearted for that. I don't think anyone that really knows me would say that, but I think in the moment sometimes, especially when people are emotional, and I think they think, what is wrong with this girl that she can just make a decision like that? But it's a skill, and it's something that I don't take for granted, and I hone it and I work on it and I check myself all the time.
Mm.
So I never just assume that I'm doing it right either. I'm really trying to evaluate and get input and suggestions and ideas and check myself. So I think humility is a big part of that as well, knowing that I cannot control everything. There are some people who think that they can manage anything, and they can. I feel like it's like the grizzly man, or that's like can be friends with the
Yeah.
grizzly bears, and of course the grizzly bear is going to kill him. And I love Ocean, who swims with the sharks. I think she's amazing, but
Mm.
we know how she's going to die, right? You cannot control these things.
Right.
And so I think there are a lot of people that have, through their skills and knowledge, they become a little bit arrogant about their ability to manage. But this is nature. This is,
Yeah.
you cannot control these things. So I never ever think that I am in control. I just try to manage what I'm facing, and I look at reality, not my ideals.
Oh, yeah.
And that can be very difficult too. So
Oh, yeah. I mean, I even think about that when, with my own two dogs, I love them and I trust them. at the same point, I also know that they are animals, right? And that you have to be very aware that they will do things possibly. And so you have to be careful, right? And I think sometimes people get really comfortable with their animals.
Especially animals and kids. They
Yeah.
think my dog should just be able to let my child crawl all over and pull his ears and tail. Like, no, you should not subject your dog to that. That's not fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like to kiss my dog on the nose. Um, he's kind of unique, but I kiss him on the nose and then I'm like, someday he could just bite me, like, and be like, no.
Yeah.
And I would blame myself. It would be totally my fault.
Yeah.
But it's something we do, but I don't take it for granted. And I will read his cues. If he is trying to back off, I will back off. And that's something else too. You need to really learn dog behavior and try to understand, a wagging tail doesn't mean a happy dog. It can mean a lot of things. And one of the training things that we teach, we have these dog behavior videos, and the first video is about like dog behavior stress signals with ears, tail, eyes. People are like, my dog is stressed. I never knew that. So every single person, no matter how much they thought they knew about dogs, were like, I learned so much in this first lesson. And I'm like, well, that's money well spent,
Mhm.
and they're shocked. They're
Yeah.
shocked that these are things that their dog has been showing them that they never understood. And so, yeah, learning dog behavior, really understanding that, rarely do things come out of nowhere. They really don't very often. It's so rare. And when people tell us the story, we can see all the signs all the time, and they ignored them, so yeah, they are animals. You can never just believe that they're just going to be perfect. They're
Mhm.
not.
Yeah.
And just like people, they are fallible in different ways. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I so appreciate your wisdom and your commitment to serving the animals and the people and prioritizing that quality aspect of it. And appreciate your time today because you've been very generous with it. If people were wanting to support Motley Zoo Animal Rescue, what are the ways that they can do that?
Sure. If you go to motleyzoo.org, obviously we have a donate button there. And right now, far and away, that is what charities need most. That is what animal welfare organizations need most. We cannot pay vet bills with, bags of food. We cannot pay vet bills with handmade blankets. Those things are great and those things are needed, but ask the organization that you want to help, what is your greatest need, and do that. A lot of people like to buy a gift at Christmas, but sometimes what we really need is the cash. So I would say just be objective and say, I want to help, and ask the organization how they need help. And so right now I would say donations is one of the best ways to do that. We have a unique way to be able to support that too, because we have an extensive line of merchandise that's rock and roll themed, that's really fun animal rescue stuff. And so that's at MZ Behind the Seams, with seams being MZ at the end too, like not S. So MZ Behind the Scenes seams.com. And so you can purchase merchandise, you can purchase shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and they're designed by volunteers, printed by volunteers, and every penny that, beyond cost, every penny of profit goes directly back into the animals program, the rescue program, to help them. If you're local in the greater Seattle area, bringing your dog to boarding and training can also help. We run a boarding and training kennel, so when people go on vacation, they can help support our mission. And you are helping make sure that we can take care of homeless animals when you are not home and cannot watch your dog. And that was what we did with the daycare too, when we were able to have that. And then training, train your dogs. Go to training. Do not think it's something you do just when you encounter a problem. Think of it as how you avoid a problem in the first place. And just like, you don't buy a car if you can't afford gas. Don't get a dog if you can't afford training, if you can't really commit to that idea of training and socialization. You're the one that needs to be trained. But really, like, let's keep dogs out of shelters. I say dogs, I mean all animals, of course, but but dogs, because they're out in the community, they're such a public part of people's lives. But we can't have dogs behaving badly, unsafe, and we can't take in all these dogs that people just don't feel like working with anymore. So donate, foster with a local organization. There are many organizations near people. Research a few, do interview and ask them, how do you train people? What are your policies? And really learn what it is that they do. And then pick one that vibes with you. And just because maybe that one doesn't work in the end, well, don't throw the whole thing out. Try a different organization.
Yeah.
But I always say, please just try fostering once. Don't say you can't, because people who foster, they work, they have kids, they have other pets. The chances of you not being able to foster are far slimmer than the fact that you probably can.
Yeah.
So adopt, foster, volunteer, buy merch,
Donate.
make donations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. And I will make sure to link your two links in the bio when we put it out, so that people can easily access those links.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful that you joined me in this conversation today, and I appreciate everything that you've contributed so far. And I will continue to look forward to what you and Motley Zoo continue to do.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, that you are sharing stories, of people who are doing this work, and really getting a perspective on, we're not magic.
Yeah.
We were not born this way. We learned how to do this. You can learn how to do this. You can do this. And whether it's animal welfare, or it's helping foster children, or, find your niche, but it starts with getting involved in something that means something, and try not to be too busy to make time in your life for that, because it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap it up today. So thank you again, Jme. And yeah, for those listening, check out Jme at Motley Zoo Animal Rescue, and all the work that they're doing, and support in whatever way you feel capable of doing.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Jme Thomas of Motley Zoo Animal Rescue for sharing their story. If you were moved by this episode, share it with a friend, follow us on Instagram, or leave a review. Until next time, may we all find our own tale of resilience. Thanks for joining us on Tales of Resilience. If today's story moved you, reminded you of your own path, or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing this episode with someone else who cares. You can follow us on Instagram at zodi.paws and animal.rescuehub to stay connected, or visit zodipaws.com or animalrescuehub.org to learn more about both of these organizations. And you can also email us directly at info@animalrescuehub.org. And if you or someone you know has a story worth sharing, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, and never underestimate the power of a tale and a little resilience.